This video is primarily my experience and critique on the game. I don't expect everyone to agree, and I know it's possible to overcome some of the problems I'm going to bring up in time. I also know random Reddit users you're going to bring up manage to clap enemies' cheeks with an insert ability build. Cool. Awesome. If I can't be any clearer, this video is about why I personally felt exhausted and uninstalled the game. And really, the game was not for me. It just felt like it wasn't for me. Doesn't mean that the game's unplayable or the worst thing on the planet. I just personally could not be bothered. As much as my brain wanted to play, every time I loaded up the game, I just couldn't escape the feeling that I was just wasting time with tedium for the sake of tedium for the sake of min-maxing amazingness. I ended up going through all of the game on Trickster. The game at its core is incredibly enjoyable, and I feel the modding system is indeed a tinkerer's dream. But the more I played Expeditions, however, the more I felt like all classes were not made equal, and that this tinkerer's dream was just like some invisible carrot that I couldn't really chase after. First and foremost, I skip through the entire campaign, and generally do in games that give me the option. I personally understand developers put their hearts and soul in the game, but really, you're giving me the option to skip all your hard work. I know what you're thinking, so what you're saying is you want unskippable cutscenes. No. I prefer more like Borderlands Echo Logs, where you get the story while you're running, gunning, and actually playing the game, and then you leave cutscenes for really important scenarios. It's kind of at that point where I feel like games are just throwing unnecessary budget at cutscenes for some concept of quote industry standard. Like the cutscenes are there as if the question was, well, we're gonna have our story-driven RPG moments, so we need cutscenes so that the story is high quality and important, right? Instead of if the question was, do we need cutscenes in this game? Are these cutscenes impactful? Not to mention, if you want to swap classes, you have to go through all of it again. At least in Borderlands, it makes a bit more sense. You get a bit of a different experience when running through the campaign with each of the Vault Hunters with numerous reactions and lines. But ultimately, I'm sick of the monotony of campaign replaying as content. It's nice to have as an option, but really, this game feels as though classes should have been flexible like Final Fantasy jobs. If I could have just swapped my Trickster to any other class, Technomancer, when I hit a wall, I would have been ecstatic. Instead, I was left with the genuine debate between waiting for people to co-op, bashing my head for upward of 20 minutes or more to potentially fail an expedition and make no progress, and starting over through the whole campaign on the class that literally had innate progression, healing, damage multipliers, and build diversity. I feel like Outriders in a nutshell was absolutely bullet sponge, no real danger through the campaign. Then suddenly you get to Expedition Tier 9 or 10 and it's a whole different game where enemies breathe and you're affected by every status on the map. You have a thick old horde of enemies where debatably elite enemies aren't marked as elites. I'm talking to you, you stagger-locking, CC immune, armor-having, high damage dealing alpha Pinocchios. You have bosses and elites that spawn only to immediately use a series of abilities. Not to mention attacks that are either impossible to read, BroodMother Surge where the AoE field lingers with less than ideal visibility, or near impossible to dodge. Mauler spit attacks, elite snipers, or really bad timing against the sniper and they just shoot you before the charge time is up. Strix Toxin Bullet Barrage, BroodMother ground spikes that still slap you even after you dodge or move, all leading up to the boss fight. That just goes on for far too long. Just about every expedition felt like it was one or two boss fights too many. Not only do you have those cutscenes that eat into your time, but it doesn't end after you obliterate the boss. You end up murdering, say, two giant monstrous beasts, and the game's like, well, just to be safe, here go 100 more ads, which might be a ranged entity you have to waste time running to, and 4 more bosses. What's the point of the cutscene if the boss was less important than the other elites and ads I have to hunt down? Then, when playing solo as a Trickster, you don't even get a single self-revive, yet playing co-op, not only can you revive your teammates and you also get self-revives. You probably want me to bring up stuff about the servers, but honestly, they were not genuinely aggravating compared to the actual gameplay loop for me. Like, I shrugged off the server issues and felt myself reacting like it was Dark Souls after reaching an end of an expedition and then just dropping to some combination I had no way of surviving. Then there's the absolute hair-pulling pain of getting a build, finally, only for it to be invalidated by a random legendary item you couldn't account for in your theory crafting. This is what I meant by the invisible carrot. The mods are incredibly interesting, but you're left with a lot of unknowns that can make or break a build. You should genuinely be able to see T3 mods and unlock them using drop pod resource, or at the least have them unlocked when you obtain the legendary item. It's already bad enough you have to get that one legendary once, but potentially twice if you end up trying to get 2 T3 perks on your weapon or gear. Then you find a new legendary piece where you feel like you should just completely change your build again. Then you hear from the grapevine that there's this legendary ability that pretty much solidifies itself into any slot. For example, the High Roller's Embalmer's Rage, basically shooting your DPS to peak performance. You get a kill and effectively have auto crits for the remainder of the game. It's basically too good to pass up. Then you look at something like Body Snatcher, which randomly pulls an enemy from range to where you killed the last, and it's pointless to use since it doesn't directly increase your damage. And the enemy it pulls could be a detriment to you. If it pulled all enemies, you'd at least get easy CC in clear times. And then you look at all the available mods and realize that Technomancer gets an ammo refund mod on Blighted Rounds at T1 compared to the Trickster that gets the same ammo refund as a tier 3 mod. Then, most status effects other classes can inflict innate like Bleed for Devastator, Burn and Ash for Pyro, Toxin and Freeze for Technomancer have some damage amplification or ammo regeneration, except Slow for Trickster. Like, I just didn't see anything that Trickster got that would warrant all of these discrepancies. Yeah, Technomancer would lose some armor mods using those forms of ammo regeneration, but I'd argue the weapon mod they gain allows for more damage. Not to mention their base skill tree has wild damage multipliers and status alterations. And then you have leveling up gear being so expensive that people end up hunting for god roll blue weapons and gear with proper perks and at least one mod so that they don't go bankrupt farming gear levels so that they can farm gear levels so that they can farm gear levels so that they can farm builds so that they can farm builds so that they can farm builds easier. Maybe even that would be forgivable if it felt worth it. Disclaimer, what is worth is different for everybody. Remember, this is just from my perspective. If you're having fun with it, why are you watching this video? Go on back to posting speed running videos, killing your BroodMothers and Alpha Pinocchio Poncho peripherals again. I'm not trying to ruin the game for anybody. This is just my experience. I had problems with it. Doesn't mean you have to have problems with it. Doesn't mean you can't play and enjoy the game. If you do that. Fine. Don't come after me. I'm not trying to hurt you. Anyway, that brings us back. Players were circumventing expeditions to farm legendaries, which should give a lot of insight for developers into how it feels at least until you hit expedition tier 15, and even then it could be better. I personally couldn't use skills like Mark the Prey because the targeting wasn't as accurate nor as quick as I'd like. Temporal Slice had a strange hit radius and never seemed to actually interrupt enemies as the ability description suggested. It felt like 2 of the 3 guns on my person were invalidated by Infinite Ammo, the game, the movie, the series, for a good chunk of my playtime. And no, I'm not suggesting round builds were all that the game had to offer, and I'm not suggesting that they were the only way to play, but even the developers understood how little investment was needed to make them shine. And particularly for Trickster, it felt like several skills didn't shine with the T1 skills available, and would likely be better with T3 skills. Not to mention, even at max CDR, there might be periods where you still have to do something, and well, you know, having a nice round amped gun could make that downtime painless, and with ammo refill mechanics, well, you effectively are always dealing your maximum damage. Since all that matters is that you obliterate enemies as fast as possible. Equally on Trickster, it felt like the healing mechanic was absolutely garbage. That or the shield, your choice, pick one. Both? Did I hear both? Okay, we're gonna go with both. Both of them were terrible. I'd almost be interested to see the number of Tricksters using Death Shield or some fast-shooting Weapon Leech alternative, since Weapon Leech is a percentage of your health per shot, making it terrible on some of the stronger pump action style guns that I wanted to use. As a Trickster, I felt like I should have some kind of invis, iframe, or decoy due to the lack of CC, but even teleporting across the map doesn't pull enemy aggro off of you. And you still have to worry about the status procs eating you. I also found myself wanting more from the skill trees. Instead of hard locking top tree into movement skills, they probably could have given us, quote, free tier 1 deception or gun ability slots, you know? And or the option for like a type of cooldown reduction we get in a tree. Would be a lot better than the temporary damage buff Trickster gets after using certain abilities. Middle tree could be more like a free tier 1 defensive armor mod. Customization would have been miles more dynamic. There's all that, and basically the first patch we got for the game was, nah, stop. No, stop. Bad. No, don't build like that. No. Go away. Go play how I want you to. Look, I know I'm not entitled to know what's coming up, what's going on, what balance changes are in mind, but literally anything would have just been better than, oh God, the players are doing this thing we didn't expect them to do, better back them up. And not enough, oh God, the players aren't touching this thing, how do we make this thing more attractive? And to reword, there's just too much reallocating what players enjoy and not enough reallocating what players don't enjoy. Now allow us to ride on out of here. I'm sorry. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram. You probably don't want to anymore, but hey, you know. Boom. I got this game for free. 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 I got this game for free.